I'm not able to.
I see him there at the bottom of the screen.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's 7 p.m. on April the 21st, and it's now time for this special meeting of the Wayne Westland Board of Education to come to order. We will begin this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Will you call the roll?
Yes, Dr. Weaver. I see his lips moving, but you're muted, Dr. Weaver.
Remember, board members, you have to turn your microphones on in order to speak at this meeting.
I am here, sir.
Please call
Okay.
the roll again, Mr. Neal.
All right. So Dr. Weaver,
Here.
Ms. Hines,
Present.
and myself also present. Mr. Buckaloo,
I'm here.
Mrs. Medell,
Here.
Mrs. Walker,
Present.
and President Cox.
Let the record reflect I am also present. We have 7 members present. The next item on our agenda this evening is 570.20, the superintendent search process, search selection process. We're going to begin this evening. We're going to begin this evening with Mr. John Silveri. Mr. Silveri, I see you there. I wonder, is there a way to position Mr. Dignan in the screen? Hello, Mr. Dignan.
You have, if you change your view, once the person who is speaking will be in the middle of the screen.
Okay. Can you hear me, Mr. Dignan? Keep in mind your microphone is also off, sir. You're going to have to go to your screen and turn your microphone on.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, good evening, Mr. Dignan. Thank you.
Good evening.
On behalf of the Board of Education of the Wayne Westland Schools, I would like to welcome Mr. John Dignan back for this second round interview. Mr. Dignan is currently the Director of Post-Secondary Options and Community Partnerships for the Southfield Public Schools in Southfield, Michigan. I'll just take a moment to describe our format this evening. Obviously, this is a little bit different than we were accustomed to and what we had previously planned. But this interview may take up to 60 minutes. There will be 14 questions from members of the Board of Education. And toward the end of the interview, time permitting, we're going to give Mr. Dignan an opportunity to make some closing remarks and also ask questions of the board. And although the task of choosing our next superintendent is ultimately the responsibility of the Board of Education as elected representatives of our school community, we value the perspective of all stakeholders. And we welcome those watching this evening to electronically submit any feedback you may wish to share in regard to Mr. Dignan's candidacy through the following email address: supsearch@waynewestlandcommunityschooldistricts.net. Once again, that's SupeSearch, SUPESEARCH @www.csd.net. That email address is also on the landing page for the Wayne Westland Community Schools website, easy to access for anybody simply by going to the website address. And as I say, these comments will be viewed by every member of the Board of Education. Mr. Dignan, since deciding to become a candidate and participating in the first round interviews, what have you observed and or learned about our district that has impressed you most favorably?
I think the biggest thing are just the people. Talking to past and present people that have worked in the school system as well as the community. Again, I think you win with people. And again, I've been truly impressed with the pride and people have towards the district. I think the other thing is the bond and the securing of funds for all the buildings are going to be touched by it. especially roofs and HVAC and things of that nature. I think it's important that we keep our kids safe, warm, and dry. And I think that's very impressive. Probably one of the biggest things that has impressed me most about the district are the programs that are already in place. I've touched on the William D. Ford Career Technical Campus with the 19 award-winning programs. The clinic at Beaumont, that's in Adams. The Family Resource Centers at Adams, Franklin, and John Glenn. I just think there's so much that the district has to offer. Community Ed, Great Futures Virtual Academy. I can go on and on. These are all foundational pieces that I truly think can be built upon.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Weaver, you have the floor for the next question.
Very well. Hello, Mr. Dignan.
Hi, how are you?
Good, sir. My question is, how will you approach team building at the central office level? How do you ensure that everyone in central administration is on the same page and working collaboratively with one another?
I think the biggest thing is to set up times to talk, and especially right now with COVID-19, that might have to be remotely. But again, to have communication and the coordination of collaboration and transparency. I need to go around and figure out, and I've done this in every district I've been in, 2 stars and a wish. One, figure out things that are happening positively in the district, and then one thing that we could improve on. Again, they're gonna have institutional knowledge and things that I don't have, which I think is important to kind of move forward. The other one is the online conversion. I need to really figure out and talk to the stakeholders, especially in central office, of what that looks like. Just looking at some of the funding, especially when you look at the stimulus care package money, the 80% of Title I that we're going to get back, to kind of convert to one-to-one, I kind of did the math with the 10,000 plus students, 700 plus staff, 100 support staff. It'd be right around $3 million. Through the stimulus funding, we could get close to $3 million to pay for one-to-one devices, computer devices for our students and staff, and then still have about $600,000 left over. And then we could talk about the needs assessment of the infrastructure to support online distance learning. Like, do all families have access in the broadband to access the internet, Wi-Fi, things of that nature? Just from what I've seen, 20–25% of the community probably does not have that. So then to problem solve with the central office, decide what we can do to kind of offset it. It'd be about $250,000 to pay for that. The one-time cost of the stimulus money would cover that, but it would probably be an annual thing. Do we pay a subscription? Do we hire a lobbyist to kind of go up in Lansing and lobby for us for the region to kind of provide those? Because again, that's going to be crucial as we move forward as a school district.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Hines.
Yes. Good evening.
Good evening.
So please tell us how you would go about building strong and enduring partnerships between our district, local businesses, industry, and community organizations.
Sure. Again, it all comes down to relational trust and really communication. I would set up advisories right away, just like I have in Southfield, to kind of get corporate America. And one of the strengths really of Wayne Westland is the location. We're surrounded by higher learning. We're surrounded by industry, business. We need to utilize that. I already have long standing relationships with a lot of the big business community, Fortune 500 companies. I have relationships with Eastern Michigan, Wayne State, Madonna. I would look, the University of Michigan, to leverage some of those existing relationships and bring them in to talk to all of our educational stakeholders. I'm going to give you a couple examples. So for instance, Wayne State C2 Pipeline, I would bring that in right away. It's a STEM enrichment program after school. It runs Monday through Thursday. It does not cost the district anything, but they have things that are focused around like drones, cybersecurity, enrichment. They also offer tutoring for students. They're doing it online right now. They have 32 learning channels online right now. So a lot of our students are accessing that from home. The best part is that they offer summer camps where they actually bus the kids from the high school to Wayne State's campus, and the kids get to select, do they want to go to law, medicine, what kind of camp they want to go to. They feed them lunch. And again, it's no cost to the district. Another one is Wolverine Pathways, which is a thing through the University of Michigan that runs 7th through 12th grade. Again, another enrichment opportunity, but if kids are in good academic standing, they get scholarships to Michigan, Ann Arbor, Dearborn, Flint. It's a phenomenal program. But again, it's connecting and getting all stakeholders on these committees. I want to hear the needs from teachers. What do you need to see in your building, your classroom? And then we start to set up advisories. Is it literacy? I have a literacy advisory right now where we try to figure out elementary, middle, high school, how can we marry the business community to the classrooms? We have celebrity reading programs where the business community comes in and reads at the elementary level. We have donations of programs. Again, we can tie it together from our location. It's ideal. We have so much around us. Another example, because it's close by, Madonna Nursing. We have a program with them where they're trying to target both minority and economic disadvantaged students for enrollment at Madonna, where it's going to be tuition free for the kids. So again, these are scholarships. Another one is, and this is probably one of my favorite ones, it's called Pro-Up. And what Pro-Up does is Pro-Up's an educational profile on kids. And what it does is the kids fill it out, and based on their interests, their needs, it will text them scholarship information, internships, schools. If they want to go into skilled trade, it'll send them skilled trade information. It is phenomenal. I've had so many kids end up with internships, scholarships they didn't know existed, summer camps. There's opportunities. So again, it's just connecting the community to the schools, getting a lot of stakeholders, because we want buy-in and we want people to feel a part of this. So hopefully I answered your question.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Mr. Buckaloo.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Cox. Good evening, Mr. Dignan.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. So here's my question this evening. Declining enrollment is a concern for many districts, including our district. Can you please identify some strategies we could employ moving forward to attract some students and families to our district and to encourage them to remain with us long-term?
Absolutely, thank you. I'm going to break this off into two parts. So one is going to be branding. The other is going to be creating unique opportunities. So I'm going to start with branding. One of the things that we can do, well, first of all, the last decade, I've seen 19% of FTEs have left from school of choice. 2018, 1,220 went to charter schools alone. So again, we want to figure out, first of all, why families are leaving. The second thing is to start an aggressive campaign, geofencing, where we go online and market a certain demographic to our school. We draw from 8 communities. That's huge. We can position that. The other thing I think that we do more than anything else, there is so much in Wayne Westland. It is phenomenal. And what we need to do is highlight each building, the points of pride, our programming, highlight that in a brochure or a magazine. And what we do is we send it to all the families in the district, one, to build internal capacity so they understand what's there. We also set up meetings with realtors in the 8 communities that serve us and give them the literature. So when they're selling homes and stuff like that, they have on hand the great things that are happening at Wayne Westland. We also can get aggressive in social media, radio and TV. We can access building community partnerships with local cable shows to run little snippets on the great things that are happening. We can have, through the high school announcement classes, kind of journal and profile those on YouTube channels and kick them out to the community so everybody understands. Other things we can do is PA announcements at athletic events. Every chance we get, we have to tell our narrative. Make sure that we're telling the positive things. We can look internally. I know some of the, in the past, I've worked with a gentleman. He actually does all the branding and marketing for Big Ten campuses and MAC campuses. He came and did an overhaul. I would try to get all of our stakeholders to meet and generate and brainstorm ideas. We did something internally in the school, which was called the Legacy Project. And this was one of my favorite things. We profiled the 5 kids at a high school I was a principal of who define what the school is. It wasn't just academics. It was involvement in extracurricular activities, the community, everything. What we did is we blew it up and created a wall of honor. And each year the class could put it up there, and it was in our cafeteria so every kid could see. We put it on our flagpoles so the community could see the great things happening in our schools. So again, I think it's really important that we function and treat the branding as one side. The other one is to repurpose the building. Now I'm going to use Marshall since it's going offline. We could expand that into K-12 virtual school and kind of even get Section 23 funding based on kids that enroll after the count day. Every month, if they show improvement, we can get money on that. That creates a revenue stream. We can look to bring Cisco Academy in there, Microsoft Teals. We can also create an adult ed component through community ed to open it up to our community so they can access it. If people want to try to reinvent themselves or reinvent their careers, we can do that. We could retrofit the space with something like MIAT, Michigan Institute of Aviation Technology. It's not in competition with the William D. Ford Career Tech Center. It offers power generation and airline mechanics. We could create a satellite there. There's so much that we can do. But again, the biggest thing is we must tell our story. We have to get out there. We have to make our community feel good. We will retain students, and we will attract students through that approach.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs.
Thank you
Mandel.
very much. Very impressive.
Mrs. Mandel?
Good evening, John. This is Carol.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, not bad for an old lady. How about you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Surviving COVID-19, huh?
Yes, very much so.
What basic philosophies do you have regarding collective bargaining? And what do you believe the role of the superintendent should be in that process?
Yeah, I think any great relationship starts with trust. The union and the district must have relational trust. It's the foundation of the whole bargaining process. Again, labor relations needs to act, probably in this case, HR must work in good faith with our bargaining units. Again, we have to have system items like articulation sessions, working conditions, compensation, management styles. And again, the treatment of our employees must drive this process. As the superintendent, I'm in coordination with the board, we set the district mission. We have to make sure that we protect the student's interest. At the same time, weighing student need to staff wants, but again, placing the proper support on this process so the staff, we can remain, have great staff morale. We can retain teachers, because again, one of the biggest investments of any school district is going to be teachers. It's $1 million investment. So again, we want to make sure that we are fair there. I think clear communication, fiscal accountability, projected staffing, school infrastructure goals, and potential legacy costs. We all have to consider all of these. But again, more than anything else, there has to be at the heart of this, the relational trust through the process. If there isn't, it'll break down. I served as the union president for many years, and you have to bargain in good faith. And the more communication and consistent communication we can have, the better it'll be. I know the EA's contract's up a year from this July, and then I believe rest of the bargaining units are a year after that.
Thank you.
Mrs. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, Mr. Dignan. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. My question to you is, beyond increasing compensation, what suggestions do you have to attract and retain highly skilled and talented employees to Wayne Westland?
Yeah, that's a great question. One thing is, again, the treatment and celebrating the greatness of our teachers. Again, they make the magic happen. One of the things that I would try to do, especially right now with the dilemma of being online, I would try to target with like Wayne State that have relationships with Oakland and Eastern, recent graduates that we might hire as kind of building subs, because I don't think people think that right now things can happen to our teachers and we might not have the ability for subs. If we can make building subs be part of this process, young teachers, when they aren't subbing, they can be intervention specialists. It gives you a chance as a district to evaluate talent. The other thing I would do, and we're in the process of doing this right now, in partnership with Eastern Michigan, we're trying to create a pipeline of teachers to give back to the profession, because 5 years from now, we're going to be in a scary space unless we start acting as a state of getting young people involved in education. So what we're doing is almost like dual enrollment. They'll start at the junior. By the time they leave us, they'll have about 2 years towards their BA. They go to Eastern Michigan, and then once they graduate, if we have an opening, we interview them. It's a way to kind of homegrown talent in that aspect. The other one is just, I really think just being there for your teachers, celebrating, making them feel that they're a part of the movement and the mission in the school. Because a lot of it doesn't have to be necessarily compensation, but if people feel valued and other things, there's more that they can do. The other thing I would try to do is try to create revenue streams so you can pay teachers after school to tutor and things like that. I think that goes a long way. I know in my past districts, we had a kind of a revenue stream. We used credit recovery, partnered with the community college, and the funding that we got from that, we actually plugged back into tutoring so we could pay our teachers after school workshop rates to kind of carry that out. So.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Neal.
Yes, Mr. Dignan, it's very good to see you again.
You
And
too.
my question to you is asking you to please describe your beliefs about the best way to support the success of building administrators, and how do you strike the right balance between providing guidance and direction and giving building leaders the autonomy to make site-based decisions?
Well, it's crucial. I think that the biggest thing, again, establishing climate and culture is the biggest thing. Everything's rooted in communication. I think communication leads to understanding. Understanding kind of develops relationships, and relationships build a school community. You have to have ongoing communication with building leaders. Things that you can do is you can meet and on a consistent basis with them. You can go to the building. You can let them know that you're there to support them. I got news. I was a building principal for close to 9 years. You're going to make mistakes. The last thing that you want is somebody standing over you and probably, that's the opportunity to talk and develop people. And I'm grateful because I've had a lot of great mentors in my career that have been there and walked me through some things. Again, you have to give people the autonomy. But again, the way that we get there is by having structured, focused data talks and kind of a litany of different things that we can do to develop our administrators and give them ideas, you know, and possible connections to different programs that would be best suited for their school. but you have to have the ability to listen to what their needs are, because every school has its own DNA. So every school's problems, is going to be different because the school community's DNA is different. So you have to recognize that it's not a one size fits all. You have to figure out how you can best support that school community.
Thank you, Mr. Dignan.
Yep.
Somebody has an active mic there with some talking in the background, if they could mute that mic. Sir, the next question is going to come from me. Assuming that every school district should do a good job in the basics, what experiences are needed beyond the basics to ensure that all students are solidly prepared for their future?
Yeah, if you'll open up your manuals, I have a section called Career Readiness. And I'll just gloss through it I think the biggest thing is making your school district unique. So really, it's our responsibility to take kids from the cradle to the careers. And how do we do this? I think we get staff buy-in and give them the framework of what does a student in the 3rd grade at Wayne Westland look like? Do they have the 4 C's? Do they have communication, collaboration, creative thinking? Again, these all play into this. The career readiness, the Public Act 229 and 230 and 231 now require career readiness and school improvement plans. Our school improvement plans should feed our strategic plan and vice versa, so we can kind of control resources. We should create career awareness in the elementaries. We should create career exploration in middle school level, and then career preparation at the high school level. Some of the things that we can do is we can create more opportunities, field trips. One of the things that I'm in the process of creating right now is every 6th grader is going to go to Eastern Michigan for a STEM activity. Every 7th grader is going to go to Oakland University. Every 8th grader is going to go to Lawrence Tech, and every 9th grader is going to go to Northwood, just to get them on campuses and to get this whole college and career readiness. We also have skilled trades tours. I think one of the things that we can really do is we can ramp up our offerings. We can offer things that make us unique, whether it's at the middle school to have STEM 101, which is an after-school STEM program. Again, youth entrepreneurship, which is gives $15,000 to classrooms for to buy stuff for projects and business plans. There's a lot of opportunity for us to make us different than the surrounding districts. Again, it's going to take creativity, but I think working together, I know we can get there.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Weaver.
Yes, Mr. Dignan. Many new theories, innovations, and philosophies have been introduced into the educational delivery in the last decade. What new idea do you feel has been most effective in improving learning?
Yeah, I'm going to use 2 different ones. One's going to be through teacher's lens, and the other's going to be in the student. I'm going to start with the teacher's lens first. Visible Learning by John Hattie is probably the biggest. He goes and he uses hundreds of different things, classroom techniques that improve student achievement. The number one was teacher advocacy. And I believe in this more than anything else. I think if we give our teachers time to collaborate and develop, and we use the professional learning process in other districts I've been in, and the evolution turns into almost data teams where our teachers are collaborating with one another. They do instructional walks, learning walks. They're doing professional development with each other. It really improves and changes the dial on how we instruct and teach our kids. The other one was we would set up, if a teacher felt they needed classroom management or decorations, we would build a schedule, get them a sub, and let them go see some other teachers. Again, all of this plays in that teacher efficacy thing that John Hattie talks about. The highest one, the most bang for the buck, is teacher advocacy. Now with student learning, I've kind of went through a metamorphosis. I started with collaborative learning, with the Socratic circles. I kind of graduated crossover learning with kind of the interdisciplinary models. I landed on one that now is changing the business community and wraps everything into one. It's called design thinking. All the Fortune 500 companies, United, Shore, Quicken Loans, GM, Ford, they all use it. And what it does, it's navigating problems and ambiguity. And it takes kids through a critical thinking process on how they address issues. It's a phenomenal program, and it kind of absorbs the other ones that I just mentioned. But the best thing about design thinking, in my personal opinion, is that it teaches kids how to attack problems. So for instance, we have some classes that are attacking classroom problems, school problems, community problems, and thinking about how they can solve them. And it's just a really cool process. There are a lot of free resources on it from Stanford University that has kind of a toolkit. And again, we just did a professional development in January with about 45 teachers, and they're really excited. Just hearing the feedback, they said it's really changing their classroom and the way that they instruct.
Thank you, Mrs. Hines.
Okay, so briefly describe how you would go about developing a comprehensive 5-year strategic plan for the district, as well as how you would implement and ensure success.
Okay, the first thing I would do is in my 90-day plan, I would go on a listening tour. And part of that listening tour would be, first of all, setting strong relationships with the board so we could operate as a cohesive team. I would graduate there, then probably to start talking to communities, leadership, the mayors, the city councils. I would also talk to central office and building administration and union leadership. And then I would try to set up more meetings with buildings, probably through grade level and departments. I'd probably have to do it right remotely, depending on when the shelter in place changes. But I would make sure that I gather that information first and sit back and have checkpoints at 30, 60, 90 days with the school board so we can start to decide what that looks like. I think one of the biggest things with the strategic plan is people try to move too fast and they're out in front and no one understands the coordination, communication of what direction that the school district's going in. I think we could develop some concrete goals by talking to all of our stakeholders and through that start designing what that looks like. I would imagine we probably would come to a universal instructional framework. I really think we have to ramp up online learning. What does that look like? How are we going to navigate our new reality? Because it's here and it's going to stay. So what does that look like? But I'm going to tell you, because I was part of a team that spearheaded one-to-one, and you have to be intentional of what that looks like. You have to walk. I've seen great teachers petrified of the technology. Great teachers. I mean, phenomenal. I think I'm going to just hang it up. I'm like, no, we're going to get you support. That's why I think positions like technology educational specialists that can walk through, can help support teachers in their classroom. We need to figure out things like that. The strategic plan, we'll get there. I'm not worried about that. But the thing that we need to do is figure out what our buildings need. How do we support teacher and learning, especially online? Everything should be centralized on the website by grade level. We need to think about socio-emotional learning. Do we have telehealth that our families can access? At food pantries, we have food insecure families. How do they access food pantries? We need to figure that stuff out. And I'm telling you, as we do, the strategic plan is going to come as clear as day. But for me to sit here and say X, Y, and Z, that would be so premature for me to do without having buy-in and communication with all the stakeholders that are involved.
Great answer.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Buckaloo.
Yes. So, Mr. Dignan, I've been looking at your 90-day plan, and I see your second goal has to do with increased student achievement. And that kind of leads right into my question,
Sure.
which is this. Our standardized test scores are not where we would like them to be.
Mhm.
We believe that these scores don't really accurately reflect the abilities of our students or the diligent efforts of our educators. What suggestions do you have for improving this situation?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you to bear with me because at first you're going to think I'm going around the block on you. The first thing is that the first thing to do is to focus on the whole child. So if kids are hungry, then we and food insecure, we need to address those. I've addressed that every place I've been. We had a meal program when I was a principal in one building, and the whole thing was kids either had to go to tutoring, be involved in athletics, or a club. The other things that we did are I established blessings in the backpack, and what this program does is for $100, it feeds an insecure, food insecure kid for a year. We ramped this up. We had corporations step up. I actually have a big corporation that possibly is going to make a huge donation that'll benefit a lot of the blessing in the backpack programs throughout Southeast Michigan. If a kid's hungry, they aren't going to learn. So that's one part of that we need to address. Every place I've been, I've set up health clinics. I really believe in it, especially right now with us being online. We have telehealth. Matter of fact, there was a school in Oakland County that's had multiple suicides. We have telehealth both through Easter Seals, Precision Healthcare, CNS Healthcare that are servicing our communities. We have food pantries in the community through faith-based organizations that we've had set up. We feed thousands of families a week in our community. Those are all part of student achievement. Now, getting to the nuts and bolts of the student achievement. Once you start to meet the needs of the kids, you need to create interventions that come during the school day. That if a kid is not getting it, that we have mechanisms, a multi-tier system of supports that can support that child, depending on where they fall on the continuum. Now, I've used SAT preps that have helped us with the standardized tests. We've built what's called educational planning assessment systems. And what this is you create a balanced assessment system and unit assessments. What it allows you to do is to take the PSAT or SAT data and pin it back to your curriculum. You need to have the ability to do that, but in order to do it, you have to make sure that teachers are trained and understand the data item analysis, and you don't scare them away. This is a concerted effort. The other thing we did was we created credit recovery, and I'm going to explain this real quick. And I apologize again for being so long-winded. I get excited sometimes. So I came to one school, and our graduation rates were low. Our test scores were low. And what I found out is we had a credit recovery issue. And what I mean by this is we had a kid that was a junior, failed math, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, and guess what they had as a junior? Algebra 1, geometry, and algebra 2. It made no sense. We can help our kids and catch them earlier. We can set up credit recovery to mirror our schedule. So when kids fail or need extra support, they can go in there and catch back up. We did a study, and a kid that failed algebra 1 would fail 4 other classes in their high school career. That was the gateway class for math and science. There are things that we can put into play to support our learners. And again, if we do it correctly, we're going to see it change. It's going to be small. I'm more concerned about growth the test scores, because if we do it the right way, it'll take care of itself.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Dignan, I want you to know that you're good on time, so take the time that you need to answer the question. We're not rushed on time with you tonight.
Okay.
Mrs. Mandel.
How would you plan to personally be an active and visible member of our community?
I think really getting out in the community, of course, going to the sporting events, band concerts, but being visible in the schools, being visible at city council meetings, not just in Wayne Westland, but Inkster, Romulus, to really get around, meet with faith-based organizations, meet with industry, set up advisories, be a part of that process. So many times, but the thing that you can do more, and I've learned this last couple of years, is create events where you're bringing the community together. And I'll give you a couple. We created a macro college night for the surrounding area, had 75 colleges represented. It did an HBCU college event. You bring people in, you're there. We did a Build Your Future event just dedicated to the skilled trades. I think we can create some buzz and some events that bring people there. People want to see you, and you have to be visible. You can't be the invisible man and then all of a sudden try to come out, hey, we need your help. They don't know who you are. And again, one of the biggest things, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, is I build relationships. I'm a people's person. I want to get out. I want to meet people. I want to talk to people. I want to try to figure out how we can work together to kind of change the trajectory of things. And again, the only way you can do that is being out in the community.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Walker.
Thank you. Mr. Dignan, my next question is a two-part question.
Sure.
What concerns do you have about this position personally?
What's that?
What concerns do you have about this position, the position of superintendent? And personally, what do you believe will be the greatest potential threat to your success? Do you need me to repeat it or did you catch it?
No, I'm writing it down. I got it.
Okay. All right. No problem.
The concerns, I guess the biggest, and this is just kind of generic for everyone. There's so many moving targets right now in education, and I'm going to give you a couple examples. So one of the big concerns is like the sales and property tax. So we know that's going to happen. We're probably going to have our FTEs being hit or reduction in them come the fall. I mean, that's just natural. There's carryover for a lot of the funding, added cost, Perkins, 31A. What does that look like? The other thing is the implementation to move towards online and distance learning. We don't know the unknown, and that's what I think makes it scary. Is there the possibility next year that something school might be postponed in October or November, or does it start in the fall? There's a lot of unknown there. And that concerns me from the standpoint of what does that look like. Now, are we going to be able to navigate it? Of course we are. So, I mean, this is why I think the coordination of communication and transparency across the board is so important amongst our staff, administrators, school board. We have to walk step by step together, and it has to be united. Now, what potential threat? At times, creating how forward in this digital world is going to be the capacity of what everyone can handle. And like I said before, each building has its own DNA. So some buildings will be able to move quicker. Other buildings might not be able to. Again, we need to ensure that people feel comfortable, that we provide the necessary support to make this conversion. We figure out the communication guidelines, digital resources. We figure out all these things that we're going to need to kind of continue this distance learning for our community, our staff, everybody. Because I'm telling you, you're going to have people that are scared of moving into this digital conversion. It's natural, but I want people to understand that's okay. So that would probably be a potential threat, possibly just people, you know, just scared of taking that next step there.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, Mr. Dignan, as you might expect, there is no more important and impactful decision for a Board of Education than selecting its next superintendent. If we were to choose you, what is it about your leadership that would cause us to look back 5 years from now and consider this to have been one of the best decisions that we have ever made?
Just the coordination and communication and building relational trust with people. But more importantly, just bringing in a network of opportunities. I've talked about health clinics, talked about higher learning. There's a lot of programming and resources, but again, I have to have the ability to kind of talk to other people to make sure that they're ready for some of these initiatives. I can't just get out and do it without, you know, the support of wherever that initiative is going to go. I think when it's said and done, because any program or turnaround is going to take 3 or 5 years. I know it's going to happen, but again, it's going to be a team effort. And I'm going to use the analogy since President Cox said that I had some time. I took over a school that was probably looking to go on the priority list. The staff morale was low. People were scared. We were sitting at 9%. And within 2 years, we went to 27%. It was the highest growth in the state from the MSU focus school coaches. We became the top school in our county. We were a gold standard school by US News and World Reports. And again, that wouldn't have happened if people didn't buy in and work together. One of the first things we did is we created what was called the core value coin. I told my staff, hey, we have to have a collective commitment. This work can only happen if we do it together. We had buy-in, and through that process, it was incredible to see the student achievement improve, the teacher ingenuity, everybody coming together to work towards a common goal. And I think 5 years from now, it's going to look completely different, but it's going to look completely different because of all the stakeholders working together to kind of, I mean, everyone should pat themselves on the back because that's what's going to happen. And I can guarantee you that.
Thank you.
Mr. Dignan, we'd like to take a few minutes now to provide you with an opportunity to ask questions that you might have for the board.
Yeah, thank you. Where is the district in regards to one-to-one computer devices?
Well, Mr. Dignan, we would like you to ask questions that the Board of Education knows off the top of their head.
Oh, okay. Okay.
You can please rephrase the question.
Okay.
Maybe take, you know, there are some challenges to this method of holding a meeting. We had hoped to have give you an opportunity at the end of these questions to ask a question that you might have that the board could answer in this forum, or to make a closing statement. You have time to do either or both. I'm just going to kind of give it to you. And if you do ask a question, I'm looking at the visual of all members of the board. Simply raise your hand if you want to answer that question. If you don't, we will. I'll try to answer it, or we'll just keep talking until he forgets what he asked.
Okay.
So go ahead, Mr. Would you like to take this opportunity to make any comment you'd like?
Yeah, I'm gonna. I'll ask one more. I had like 5, but I'll ask 2 questions and then I'll make a closing statement. Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Has there been a needs assessment of technology infrastructure in the district and community to determine things like broadband, bandwidth, Wi-Fi?
Is there any member of the board that would like to take that? Okay, if not, I'll respond in this way. You mentioned during the course of your answers the bond issue. Well, that bond issue took into consideration what the district wanted to do in terms of its technological infrastructure going forward. It doesn't matter what you buy if you don't have the availability within the buildings to use the equipment. So there has certainly been an assessment of it. Where it stands right now isn't something that I have off the top of my head.
Okay. And then the other question, and then I'll leave it there and I'll make a closing statement. Are there curriculum and professional development committees that represent every building in the district?
There is work done in that area, but I want you just to look at the school district that you're applying for here. And of course, you know the history of what's been going on for the last couple of years. We have been working towards a goal of achieving many of the things you're talking about, and for one reason or another, we haven't gotten there. So there's much work to be done, and I wouldn't say we're where we need to be with that.
Okay. And just in closing, I just want to.
Yeah, Adele, feel free.
I was going to say I've been raising my hand here.
All right, well,
I can answer both of those questions about technology. We have taken a look at one-to-one use of computers with the students. The problem, as you mentioned when you were talking about it earlier, is the amount of money it would cost for implementing internet access into all of the homes of that. And it is a financial issue for us. And going forward, we didn't see where that was something that we could pull from other programs and take away in order to pay for this, even though it had the opportunity to augment what the kids were doing in the classroom. As to curriculum, we have a curriculum council that meets fairly regularly to discuss and pass and review curriculum, textbooks, materials in this district. And each one of our content areas also has bi-monthly meetings where they sit down and analyze test data. They take a look at our materials to make sure that we are meeting all of our objectives. And as you know, there's a lot of initiatives from the state that we have to look at each grade level. So we have been doing this for a lot of years, and I think it becomes more difficult each year because more things get heaped on each grade level.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. I just want to say too, I'm very appreciative of being here this evening. I want to thank the school board and the Wayne Westland community for having me. I also want to discuss, take some time to discuss this unique time in our lives, because we are truly in uncharted waters on so many levels with COVID-19. It's affected so many people's lives in one way or more, whether through illness, the loss of a loved one, loss of work, working from home, and much more. A big thank you to the caregivers, the parents and guardians who have taken up the role of teacher at home, helping our students navigate this challenge. To our teachers and educators who are going the extra mile for our kids and school community, putting together district learning plans. By the way, congratulations on the approval by Wayne Risa. I know a lot of energy and thought was put into it. The food and packet drives at John Glenn High School, not to mention the pandemic donation of the goggles to the police department. I say thank you to all the educators for doing what's best for the kids and the community. We know social and emotional well-being of all our families and community is paramount during this time. I'd like everyone to remember that a building does not make a school community. People make the school community. Next few months will present challenges and opportunities for us all. This is a time of adversity, but with adversity comes opportunity. I know working together, we can make sure that the Wayne Westland Community School System remains a stable force and spark that our children's need to ensure a great future. We'll navigate this crisis together. In this moment, we have a unique opportunity to move our school community forward. It gives us the opportunity to attach the past to the present to design the future direction of this school district. In closing, I would just like to thank all of the first responders, healthcare workers, grocery store workers, and anyone else who's an essential worker during this crisis. Their dedication to work and helping the rest of us cope and survive is much appreciated. I thank you again for this opportunity.
Mr. Dignan, you're certainly welcome, and thank you. We sincerely appreciate your time and continued interest in being the next superintendent of the Wayne Westland Community School District. We will be following up with you once we have completed our decision-making process. I would like to remind everyone that if they would like to send the Board of Education any comment regarding Mr. Dignan's interview this evening, you can do so by emailing the email address supesearch@wwcsd.net. That's Supe, S-U-P-E, search, S-E-A-R-C-H. That email address will be posted on the landing page for the Wayne Westland Community School District. Once again, Mr. Dignan, thank you for interviewing with us again.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Mr. Dignan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the next, the part B of 570.20, which is the superintendent search selection process, calls for the board to now interview Mr. Keith McDonald. And if I'd like to ask the moderator, are we prepared, Mr. McDonald?
I can jump in on her behalf. I know that
Okay.
she's experiencing a little bit of technical
There's
difficulty
many-
getting him. Can you hear me? She's experiencing
yes, I
some
can hear you,
technical
John.
difficulty. Okay, sorry about that.
Mr. McDonald?
Jenny's working to get.
Stay there. You've got your your microphone off. Go down to there you go, your microphone now, Keith.
I don't know.
You with us? Very good, very good. Good evening, sir. And on behalf of the Wayne Westland Community Schools, we'd like to welcome Mr. Keith McDonald back for the second round interview. Mr. McDonald is currently Director of Human Resources for the Livonia Public Schools in Livonia, Michigan. Now, I will take just a moment to describe our format. This interview this evening may take up to 60 minutes. There will be 14 questions asked by members of the Board of Education. Toward the end of the interview time, if we have an opportunity with time permitting, we will give Mr. McDonald an opportunity to make a closing statement or ask questions of the board. Although the task of choosing our next superintendent is the responsibility of the board as elected representatives of our school district community, we value the perspectives of our stakeholders. And we welcome those watching this proceeding to electronically submit any feedback they may wish to share with the board regarding Mr. McDonald's candidacy or the interview this evening to the email address supesearch@wwcsd.net. And that email address appears on the landing page for the district's website. These comments will be viewed and considered by all members of the board. Now, Mr. McDonald, I'm going to begin asking questions, and then we'll take turns with different members of the Board of Education. First of all, welcome here tonight, and we appreciate you adapting to our current meeting methods. Since deciding to become a candidate and participating in the first round interviews, what have you observed or learned about our school district that has impressed you most favorably?
Sure. Before I answer, I just want to say thank you again for having me this evening, and thank you to all the community and staff I believe that are present elsewhere on this webinar. Video conferencing has just kind of become our life over the last 5 weeks, and I will do my best to look at the camera, although for 5 weeks of practice, I've yet to be successful with that. So what have I noticed about the community? For one, this district is not just a school district. It is a part of the fabric of this community, really. It is amazing the breadth of reach that this district has. You have almost 180, 200 business partners and faith-based partners throughout your municipalities that you serve. Those connections I think are just tremendous. You bring the community in. You have the Dyer Senior Center or the Family Resource Center. You understand your role in the community, and to me, that's one of the most admirable things about this district. I've seen this district for a long time. As mentioned before, my 3 sisters have all gone here, my cousins, my 13 nephews and nieces. So I've been able to see their successes. But what else I saw is how proud they were to be part of this school district. And that's something I really want to be part of. As well, I've talked to, and I know a number of staff here in Wayne Westland, and every one of them, to a person, has said how much they love being part of the district, that they want to see the district be exceptional. And that's something that's something I want to be part of too. And then you asked kind of on a more of a recency bias is what have we seen? Well, since we spoke last in the beginning of March, things I think have changed a little bit. And so, we're no longer face-to-face instruction and we're online and we're paper packets. And, through the connections in Wayne County, I've been able to keep in touch with, other administrators in your district and have seen a lot of the great things, whether it's the food distribution, the immense amount of meals that you're passing out every week, or putting together the curriculum in such a short amount of time, and to see on Facebook and other social media on just how the staff has rallied around the students and to be there for the students, whether that's academically or social emotionally. And again, that's a staff I want to be part of.
Okay, thank you, sir. Dr. Weaver.
Yes, thank you for being with us tonight, Mr. McDonald.
Thank you.
How will you approach team building at the central office level? How do you ensure that everyone in central administrative is on the same page and working collaboratively with one another?
So part of team building, I think, is working together and being able to have trust in each other. And so building that trust, building those relationships. And, if you're taking a look at the 90-day plan, relationships are phase 1 for me. That's essential. That's the groundwork, the framework for everything else that can take place. So, throughout central office, working within each of those departments, building those relationships, and then finding how those departments interconnect. I think where districts feel the most is when all of their different central office departments act like complete silos, and they all act independently. Academics is doing one thing, finance is doing another thing, HR is doing another thing, and they don't have a common goal, a common purpose. And when those silos are put together, yes, you have your certain things that you need to do within your department. But when you come together and you work together on common goals, I think you get a lot more out of each of those departments. And I think your students benefit a lot more because you're able to unify. And when I say a common goal, let's be honest, when we're talking about a school district, that common goal is probably students. At least it should be. So when you start to rally around that purpose and have specific things that you're trying to accomplish within the district, and those different departments are working together, you're going to see a lot more success.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Hines.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Please tell us how you would go about building strong and enduring partnerships between our district and local businesses, industry, and community organizations.
Sure. Can I have you just repeat that question? It broke up just a tiny bit for me.
Yes, I'll be a little bit louder. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Please tell us how you would go about building strong and enduring partnerships between our district and local businesses, industry, and community organizations.
Sure. So I mentioned it a little bit earlier there in that first question is how many building partnerships you already have built. So coming in, I don't necessarily need to build a new partnership there. I need to become part of that partnership and part of that relationship. So getting myself involved with that and working together with those business and faith-based leaders, I think is extremely important. As I mentioned earlier too, I think the one nice thing about this district too is the businesses that are within the community, they want to partner with this district. And so kind of building off of that desire for them to be part of of this district and working through that. Right now, internet is, I think, a thing for just about every district out there. And, as an example of how I'm reaching out is I'm working with our education foundation right now. I'm working with our Chamber of Commerce and a local charity, and we're creating ways to get our students that don't have internet hotspots and service plans for the next 4 months. And then we're really trying to create a way to funds. When you talk enduring, we're trying to, capitalize on this opportunity where businesses are looking to help support us and bring to their attention this digital divide. And now they're wanting to come in and support not only for the next 3 to 4 months, they want to be partners with us so that our students that don't have internet right now may have internet for the entire school year next year. So we're trying to, kind of build on what we have and then build it even further from there.
Thank you. Good answer.
You're welcome. Nice to see you.
Mr. Buckaloo.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mr. McDonald.
Good evening. Looks warm there.
Everything is fine, thank you, sir. I was looking at your 90-day plan and the section heading Planning for the Future. And one of your key goals there is student attraction and retention, which leads me to my question. Declining enrollment is a concern for many districts, including Wayne Westland. Please identify strategies we might employ to attract more students and families to our district and encourage them to remain here.
Absolutely. So in Livonia, as a director of HR, I actually oversee all of people accounting. So for me, that means I'm doing all of our, I identify all of the trends, I track, I analyze, I create cohort data, so graduating class data. I track all of our school of choice data into that. And so I look at how those different programs are affecting our enrollment and, what grade level do we need to keep them at to know that we have a higher level of retention. So for us, it's 5th grade. If we can get a student through 5th grade, we have a much higher level of retention at that marker. So really understanding and analyzing data, I think, is one key component to that. Obviously, I think we're all in Wayne County. Most of us around are having declining enrollment. In fact, today we talked about, this was one of our conversations as a cabinet team, what are we doing with our projections and what do we think is going to be for next year? We have a lot more uncertainty right now. We don't know what it's going to look like come fall, and our students or families going to be comfortable coming back to face-to-face settings with 25, 30 kids in a classroom when it's kind of hard to social distance with 25 kids in a classroom. And there's not a district around that has the space or the capacity, teaching staff wise or budget, to do 12 kids in a classroom. We'd all love to, but let's be honest, that's not a reality. So where are these kids going to go? Maybe to an online school. Well, you click on your front page, and one of my colleagues mentioned it today. You click on your front page and you see great futures, 6 through 12. Come register now for 2021. You're ahead of the game. I think you're going to have a lot of districts chasing your tail on having an online program right now, because that, I think, is something that is going to be of interest to a number of families. So I think in some ways you've done a huge big step with that online program right now. But as far as attraction and retention, go back to that. Every year, Wayne County puts out, or Wayne RESA, I should say, puts out mobility reports. Mobility reports are reports of students coming into your district and students exiting your district, and we share those around throughout the county. And so taking a look at that, excuse me, and looking too at data that's available in Unitrix and IDEX, you can see that about a quarter of the students that could attend Wayne Westland schools do not. That's a lot of revenue that's lost, over 3,000 students. If you could even just return 10% of them, that's $3 million in additional revenue. So, ideally, there has to be some strategies out there to start bringing some of those students back. We know that, I'm sure every one of your competitors, because this is a competitive market now, it's not just public schools, we have charters and PSAs in private schools out there vying for the same exact students. I can guarantee that they're sending out mailers. They're putting out some marketing campaigns. They're trying to attract your students. So I think as a district, you need to do the same thing. Have to spend some money. I mean, even if we spent $10,000 on a marketing campaign of a mailer that went out, and we got 3 of the 3,000 some students came back to us, we still made $15,000 on that venue. So it's worth a little bit of investment to try to bring some of those kids back. Ideas for doing a marketing campaign. You have a digital media class. So when I was at Churchill High School, I used to use my digital media class all the time, and they were over across the street at the Career Center. And I'd work with the teacher and say, these are some of the parameters that we're looking at, and I need a marketing campaign. I need a new poster for a culture program that we're putting in the school. And then they would run a contest within the class. The work was amazing from these kids. And then you could take the winner there, or the 2 or 3, and then you use your own printing department, and you can print them and mail them out. It doesn't have to be a real high cost venue or idea for it to be successful. And it's a way to bring your kids in as well. The other part of this is you actually have to know why your students are leaving. You can't market when you don't know what you're marketing. You don't know if, you have to know, are they leaving because the bus ride's too long? Are they leaving because they had didn't like the culture of that school? Are they leaving because of test scores? Are they leaving because they want to send their kid to a school that has a uniform or that speaks a different language? So you have to know why your kids are leaving. Fix those issues if they're things that can be under our control, and then market towards those so that you can bring those kids back. Build the brand. Wayne Westland is a brand. Having people walk around in a Wayne Westland shirt means something. Putting a sticker, you talked about business partners earlier, putting a sticker on every door of your business partner. Every time someone walks into that business, they now see a Wayne Westland and that business supports them. All of that helps. It all helps build the brand. So getting that out there, building up the culture, I think is a part of it too. Positive culture brings in people, whether it's staff or students.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
Mrs. Madell.
Good evening, Keith. It's Carol.
Hi, Carol. How are you?
Let me point out, I have on my Wayne Westland apparel.
I love it. And what a great background.
Thank you. I love it too. It reminds me of Alaska. What basic philosophies do you have regarding collective bargaining, and what do you believe is the role of the superintendent that the superintendent should have in this process?
Sure. So first off, I've been an administrator for 13 years, and during that time, I've been through 6 rounds of bargaining. 3 of them were concessionary bargaining back in the 08, 09 through 11, 12 timeframe. And all of those were on the administrative side. So I had 4 rounds as a principal, 3 of which I was the lead negotiator for those. On the district side, for the last 2 years in HR, I've been part of 2 rounds of bargaining with all 6 of our different bargaining groups. In each of those, I guess I have maybe a different approach than most in negotiations. To me, I see it as an opportunity to build a relationship. It's an opportunity to build trust. It's an opportunity to build teamwork between the 2 sides. And yes, you do that at the table. You're not always going to agree, but just because you don't agree on something doesn't mean you can't build trust. When you have open and honest conversations at the table, you can build that. If you've read through my letters of recommendation, the last letter in there was from a teacher who is the lead negotiator for the LEA, for our teachers union. And she instead herself put it in there. That's not my words, those are hers. When I came into HR 3 years ago, the relationship between our labor unions and our HR department was not strong. But I worked at listening. I worked at being a teammate with them and listening to what concerned them most and trying to build that trust. And I can say I was part of what helped change that trajectory of that relationship I can see that playing out now, and some of the stuff we're doing over the last few weeks. Our unions have been partners with us. They have not been our adversaries. We want to do something. They were working right next to us saying, how can we help you? What do we need to do? You know, that's what you need to build. And that happens actually at a bargaining table. So yeah, it's great when you get a CBA. It's even better when you get good relationships coming out of it. And then you asked too, you know, what is the superintendent's role? The superintendent's role is a little bit different. You know, you're not going to necessarily be at the table, but I still think you have a lot of control over who you send to the table and how you want to, how do you want the negotiations to be? So if you want that tenor to be that relationship building, it can be that relationship building. You're going to be part of the strategy. So we spend, you know, a ton of time as a district level. I bargain on both sides, as I said. District side and the labor side is very different. When you're strategizing for 6 or 7 or 8 different bargaining groups compared to just your one, and you're working at budgets and how does this all interplay, and you're looking at multiple year budgets and trying to make projections on student enrollment 2 and 3 years out, because that feeds into your budget. You know, you have to be a systems thinker and a future thinker in order to help strategize and plan for bargaining. You know, you have to understand your staff. You gotta know what your staff turnover is like, because that also impacts your budgeting. You know, how many retirements a year are you getting? What are you projecting? There's a lot of research that goes into it. The superintendent is really involved in that part of the process, that strategizing and that budget setting, as well as the board. You know, we work together on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mrs. Walker.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you. Welcome back, Mr. McDonald. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Beyond increasing compensation, what suggestions do you have to attract and retain highly skilled and talented employees to Wayne Westland?
Sure. So let's start with a little data first. So the Center for American Progress has deemed Michigan the worst state right now. 67% decline from 2008 to 2010 in the amount of teachers graduating our universities into a teaching program. So we have had this decline in teaching, and now we're having an increase in some of our staff that are retiring. So that teacher shortage is real. And I know there's numbers out there and arguments that say it's not, but it is real. So if you can't attract and retain your staff, your students suffer. So this is one of the most important things I think districts need to do, and HR departments specifically. I approach it as, you know, from the recruiting fair standpoint, which is where we find a lot of candidates. It is not the same as it was 7, 8 years ago. 7, 8 years ago, you went to a recruiting fair, the candidates sold themselves on you, and that was how it worked. If the candidate's doing all the talking at a recruitment fair, you're probably never going to see them again. Because no matter how much you like them, what really has to happen is they have to fall in love with you. So if they love you, they're going to be checking your website all the time to try to get a job. So I approach it very differently. Yes, I let them talk. We have that conversation, but then I sell them about my district. What is it about my district that I think you're going to love? And then the following day, I'm the one that, or that evening, I'm the one that says that email. Hey, thank you for stopping by. Here's the link to our website so that you can keep checking. And when I post a job that's in their area, I send them another email. Hey, I got an elementary teaching position that I just posted. I remember talking to you at Michigan State. You know, this is a great opportunity. Would love to see your application in there. So I do a lot of active recruiting in that way that I think is different than what a lot of districts maybe have done. I also like to use social media. There are 2 types of candidates. You have your active candidate, that candidate who says, I want a new job. I'm an active candidate. I wanted a new job. I wanted to be here, right? I've talked about that before. I applied. You didn't have to reach out to me. I applied. Then there's the passive candidate. There's that candidate that sits there and wasn't even thinking about applying for a teaching job, but they saw it on, you know, LinkedIn, or they saw it on Facebook, and they maybe saw it 2 or 3 times. So getting your jobs posted out on some of those sites and building your candidacy through that, your candidacy pool through that passive candidate. I've had huge success with LinkedIn and putting it out there. Not only do I get that passive candidate, but I may get someone, maybe Ms. Walker, you have a sister that is a teacher that you love your job and where you're at, but you saw that go by and you're like, wow, she might like that. And so you send it out to her. I got you recruiting and you don't even know me. I mean, that's exactly, the type of thing that power of social media, that's how it can work for you. There's other ideas out there, building a teacher cadet program. I know you have one over at the Ford Skills Tech Center. That program's more aimed at the lower childhood, early childhood. Building up that program to elementary, secondary. Those are where we're really hurting some teachers as well. I'm working right now with Madonna and their CTE director to create a program in our career center, so with an elementary, secondary mindset. Having university partnerships like with Eastern Michigan, they have a Pathways program, or building really strong relationships with your student teaching or intern placement coordinators. I work a lot with a couple people over at Wayne State with social workers. We're not talking about teachers, but social workers. That's an area that's very hard to hire. I've had a lot of success because I work with them. I try to get 2 or 3 interns every year. And my role is, I tell my people that if you're taking on an intern, you're going to train them as if they're your own child. Make them as good as they possibly can be. And if they love us when they're done, we're not going to let them leave. We'll find another job for them. And so we get a lot of success in hiring people who have interned with us, our student teachers and our interns. You mentioned, no money here. We're not talking about the money, but CBAs are more than just money too. I think it's that labor relationship that you have at the table that gets out there, as does good language in the contract. I don't know. I think I rambled on a little bit on that. Building staff capacity, I think, would be the other one. That gets more into the retaining of staff. Teaching's a different type of profession. You could literally teach in the same classroom, the same grade for 30 years, and that doesn't exist anywhere else, really. You move jobs, you get different titles. So being able to build capacity in your staff, I think, is exceptionally important. Challenge them, make them grow professionally. I think that's a great strategy to help and retain staff.
Mr. McDonald, I actually do have a sister that's a teacher.
Awesome.
But thank you so much for your answer.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Mr. Neal.
Yes, good to see you again, Mr. McDonald.
Likewise.
I would like to ask you to please describe your beliefs about the best way to support the success of building administrators, and how do you strike the right balance between providing guidance and direction and giving building leaders the autonomy to make site-based decisions?
I think I got all of it, but if I'm going off on a tangent, go ahead and feel free and stop me and say I'm missing the mark. But I think I got it. So
okay. I
do a lot of work right now with a lot of our newer administrators. We've had a lot of administrative turnover, I think, over the last 3 or 4 years. So we have a lot of newbies out there. And one of the things I did last year was I started something called our new admin series. And so we bring all of our new people in and they meet with all of our central office folks once a month. And we break it out into the departments, and we try to really build those relationships with them, make sure they're comfortable. We try to get them training, make sure that they're part of MEMSPA or MASSP, so that they're getting that connection too from a professional organization, and make those opportunities possible for them to go to those trainings. You talked about, I think, the difference between guidance and direction, and how do you separate the two. I think there are some things that are must. So you talk about maybe a curriculum directive that's coming from central office, from our instruction department. Some of those are going to be must-dos. You're going to have a direction, and you're going to need to be able to support that direction and make sure that that's implemented. And there's going to be other things though that are going to be guidance on how do you maybe do some of your student supports? You know, are you doing some different type of push-in? Are you doing some a remedial type of class that is different? That could be different from maybe one building to another sometimes. So I think it all depends. It's a difficult question when it's hypothetical like this. You know, it's much more real when you're talking about an actual situation of whether this is one of those, you know, we're all on board. This is kind of our direction we're all going, as opposed to, you know, here's the guidance on this, you know, make it happen. I can think right now, even with our own, with my administrators in Livonia, you know, we've been doing a lot of work with the continuity of learning plan, as is every district, really. I mean, I think that's been the sole focus of almost everybody that's an administrator right now, or teacher for that matter. And there are some of those things that are guidance, and there's some of those things that are directive, and in making those choices between the two. And sometimes you get administrators that didn't get the message that it was more directive, that we're all on this page, and they took it as guidance. And so you have this one-off at a different school. That can cause chaos, because now that school is saying, this is how we're grading, and everybody else is saying, this is how we're grading. And that missed message, well, of course, that gets out on Facebook. That makes Ms. Johnson's life a lot of fun over the next 24 hours. And, you know, then that gets back. So you really have to know, you know, where your administrators are, and you have to know how they respond to different directives too, to know how they're going to follow through, or if there are some that need a little bit more guidance on that.
Good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. McDonald, we assume that every school district should be doing a good job on the basics, but what experiences, in your view, are needed beyond the basics to ensure that all students are solidly prepared for their future?
Sir, when you ask that question, are you talking about the students' basics, or are you talking about the staff?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is that we all expect the students to come out of the school with a well-rounded education, you know, reading, writing, arithmetic. Beyond that, though, in your view, what do you think the students need to ensure that they're prepared for their future?
Okay, now I understand. Thank you, sir. And I think you hit it right on in your vision and mission. It's that whole student. So yeah, you talk about the basics, the grades. It's being a person who is ready to go out into society, be it the workforce, be it community college, four-year university, the armed forces. Whatever it is, the path that they want to take is getting them ready with some of those soft skills. Are they able to speak and communicate effectively using voice? You know, I think as we move on and we see these students coming through, that becomes even more important, because they don't even have the phone conversations like we used to when we were their age. You know, we were picking up a phone, spinning the dial to make the call, and we were wired, and we had conversations with each other. These students don't have a lot of conversations with each other. They're using text and Instagram to communicate with each other. So getting them those experiences in the classroom to be able to communicate and work together, to be a teammate. You know, you would go back to a question you asked about the central office, about how do you make a good team. You know, it doesn't matter where you are, what job you do, you have to be able to be a good teammate. And if you work at McDonald's, they call it part of the team. I mean, they refer to it as a teammate. So that's a very important skill. And, you know, granted, your athletes probably get some of that in their team sports, but for all of our students, they have to have that opportunity in the classroom to work together and, you know, for a common goal. I think they have to be technologically sound. I think technology will always be changing, but perhaps to have them be comfortable with different modes of technology, whether that's, you know, working in a Mac system, working in, you know, a Microsoft Windows system, having that kind of flexibility so that they are prepared when they go out and do whatever it is next in life.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Weaver.
Yes, Mr. McDonald, there have been many new theories, innovations, and philosophies that have been introduced into the educational delivery in the last decade. What new idea do you feel has been most effective in improving learning?
I gotta be honest, it's a question I haven't really thought deeply about at different levels. I will say there's been a change in our focus on reading at the lower levels and how we go about teaching reading instruction and the importance of it. I know we've identified third grade as an important marker, and there's a lot of data out there that would support that. And I think the ways in which our elementary teachers are instructing reading and the emphasis that they have on different areas of reading to be able to support that. There's been some bringing back of phonics into instruction. And all of that I think is important, is a real important marker in the education of a student as a whole. I know there's a lot, like I said, there's some data behind the third grade reading law. How it's being implemented, I think has, I think you can have an argument that, retention is not necessarily the best strategy to use. If you believe in John Hattie's research, it actually has a negative effect size, meaning it does more harm than good. So, I think there are other options out there to address when a student isn't reading at level, and other than retention.
Thank you, Mr. Buckaloo.
Yes, thank you, sir. 1 second. All right. So my question is, our standardized test scores are not where we'd like them to be. We believe that these scores do not accurately reflect the abilities of our students or the diligent efforts of our educators. What suggestions do you have for improving this situation?
Sure. And you broke up a little bit, but I just want to repeat the question so that I make sure that I heard it correctly, is that you are not necessarily satisfied with your standardized scores, and that you feel that they don't reflect necessarily the abilities of your students or the contributions that your staff is making. Did I hear that correctly?
You did, sir.
Thank you. So one of the things I think is most important is to have a unified curriculum. And I know recently you've adopted Wonders, which is an Ed Reports green curriculum, meaning that it meets all the different thresholds of that testing to be a good quality curriculum. When you can have a student have a similar or the same really curriculum and that builds upon itself all the way through, from kindergarten or through 6th grade, that's going to help reading scores. And to be able to develop or adopt a curriculum in math that does the same thing will be extremely beneficial. It helps your professional staff in their planning. It helps in identifying holes in students' abilities and be able to address them. It makes them unified. So when you move a staff from one building to another, they're still teaching the same curriculum. When you have a student who moves from one building to another, they're seeing the same curriculum. So to me, I think that is one of the biggest things that you need to be able to do as a district, is have a solid curriculum and then train your staff. You have a staff that wants your kids to do better. They do. If you gave them that opportunity, I think you'd have a lot of staff that would jump all over that if they knew that or believed that that curriculum is going to lead to better scores for your students.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Hines.
Can you hear me? Oh,
Yes, we can.
okay, great. Sorry about that. Briefly describe how you would go about developing a comprehensive 5-year strategic plan for the district I'm sorry, let me repeat that. I'm so sorry. Briefly describe how you would go about developing a comprehensive 5-year strategic plan for the district, as well as how you would implement it and ensure success. Want me to repeat it?
I think I got it all written down. You said briefly in that, huh? 5-year plan, talk about how we're going to build it, implement it, and ensure it, and you said briefly.
Correct.
Okay. So I did mention part of building a strategic plan as part of my 90-day plan. I think some of the focus of that now, in retrospect, knowing what we're dealing with now, may be a little bit different with given that we're no longer face-to-face instruction. But I think the strategies for building that plan remain the same. I think we need to, one, engage an outside source. So whether that's someone like MLI, who I know is a state organization that works in this regard, or Kamen Associates, who is more of a national association that works on building strategic plans with different districts. But using their expertise in helping us, I think we identify our stakeholders internally that we want to be our core team members. We identify our ad hoc group, build it out from there. You know, within that, we need to identify our markers. What is it? What data do we want to use to help us identify what our key focus areas are? I think we have ideas, and we're probably right in a lot of those ideas. But you need to have data to support why this is a focus area for the district, why it's a priority area. And then from there, I think you need to break it down in manageable increments. You know, you go back a question or two and talk about standardized scores and that you want to improve those scores. You can't say overnight, we're going to increase those scores by 10 or 15%. If you have a goal that's 5 years out, that's 10 or 15%, that may be doable. You put the right framework in place with curriculum and training, and you have a strategy for how you're going to incrementally get there, then it's manageable. And I think the same holds true regardless of what focus area you're talking about. You know, you can't take one big bite of the apple and make it all work. And then as far as implementing it, I think the implementation part is really important. If it's one thing that I've learned from working with my current superintendent, is that you really have to communicate your plan appropriately, accurately, and continually. The strategic plan can't be something that gets presented in an August PD and then doesn't get talked about again. If this is your strategic plan, this is what you live every day for the next 5 years. I mean, that's the commitment that you're making. And so it has to stay relevant, and it has to stay in front of our stakeholders. So that's our staff, that's our students, our community, in order for it to be effective. And I think that's one of the ways you help ensure that it's going to be effective. I think the other is you have measures. And I talked earlier about, well, you need to identify your data points. Well, part of that is so that you can set your success criteria. How are we going to know if what we put in place and the strategies we're doing are effective? We have to have some markers that are put out there that are targets for us, but they're also our formative assessment. We got to get there and say, hey, what do we know? What do we have to change? So I think kind of throw that all together. I guess you kind of need to work as a team. And if you don't have a team approach on a strategic plan, it's somebody's individual plan, and an individual plan never goes that far.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mrs. Medell.
Thank you. How would you plan to personally be an active and visible member of our community?
Sure. I guess you said it in the question, is be active and visible. And that's you gave me the answer. You know, I want to be there at, you know, athletic games and, you know, open house, your kindergarten roundup, your, you know, staff meetings, you know, plays. There's so much that goes on in the district, especially when you have 2 high schools. There's almost an event every night. I don't know I can commit to an event every single night of the school year, all 180 days, but I surely will commit to being at a lot of the big ones and a lot of the small ones as well. But it's not just being there. That's only part of it. When you're there, physically and just sitting up in the stands and not talking to anybody, great, the superintendent's here. That's awesome. But it's the part of, getting the opportunity to talk to people, hear them. Sometimes that's the only time they have an opportunity to talk to the superintendent. And, I want to be, able to be approached and be able to talk to people. And, sometimes they're going to complain about something. That's good information for me. So, I look forward to those opportunities. It's one of the things I think in my position now, I don't have as many responsibilities in that regard that I miss from being a principal. I miss those plays and the Friday night football games and talking to my families and seeing them in a different capacity. I always enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. McDonald, my next question is a two-part question. What concerns do you have about this position? And personally, what do you believe would be the greatest potential threat to your success?
Well, that's a loaded question. I think it's probably, in some ways, I think the answer is almost the same. And quite honestly, if this interview would have been on March 17th, when we originally had it scheduled, and today, this answer would have been completely different. I think one of the biggest concerns right now is what we're hearing from our lobbyists from Wayne Risa, what I'm hearing from MASA, which is our Superintendents Association, about what the fund, our per pupil is going to be next year, and the type of cuts that we're talking about are large. As a superintendent, I don't think the first thing you ever want to do is walk into a potential budget cut. That's just not how you're looking at things. I think, a month ago, we would have been talking about a 240, I think was the range increase. And now we're looking at, mid threes or greater decrease in a per pupil foundation allowance. That's enormous. That is something that concerns me. It's hard to not point your finger at the superintendent and say, that superintendent just came in and made huge budget cuts. I'm not saying that that's what I need to do walking in. I have to really dig into the budgets with the finance director and with the board and understand everything. I don't have that depth of knowledge right now. But that does concern me that coming in, we don't know what's coming back from the state. They have to give us a budget, by June 30th. And in all likelihood, I think that budget could even change after the fact. Because we're not going to have all the information regarding income tax return and sales tax return by the time they're making that. So I think that that's potentially, likewise, the threat to my success is that coming in, if people are looking and going, I hate that guy because he had to cut this person or this program or whatever else, then any other thing we do may be in jeopardy because of that. So that's the one threat to success that I see is the tide. I guess those two are kind of tied together in that regard. So, and I think that would be the case for anybody who was walking into a new superintendency right now.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald.
Mr. Neal.
Yes, as you might expect, Mr. McDonald, there's probably no more important and impactful decision for the Board of Education than selecting its next superintendent. If we were to choose you, what is it about your leadership that would cause us to reflect 5 years from now and consider this to have been the best decision that we've ever made?
Sure. I think if you read my letters of recommendation, I think you may have seen a theme, and that was integrity. And I think it was pretty much in every letter that I'm a person that has high integrity and high moral character. So there are some consistencies that I have in my leadership. Integrity is by far one of those. The other is that I'm always going to operate with the best interest of students. You know, that's what you're hiring me for is that. I'm going to treat people with respect. I'm going to build relationships on trust, including relationships with the board. You know, I work to understand. You know, I don't think you can build those relationships without trying to first understand where people are coming from. You know, I think you'll find my leadership to be very steady. I don't get riled by things. You know, I don't get shaken. I don't get high. I don't get low. You know, and I stay steady. And I think people around me appreciate that, because when times are tough, I'm not going to be upset. You're going to see me still be as much of a rock as I possibly can for people. And I think that helps across the board when you talk about culture. And as a leader, I think culture is extremely important. The culture, you know, within your office, within your, you know, district, and within each school, because each school has their own culture as well. And so, you know, to me, that's something that I would spend time with too, is trying to help each school build up their culture.
Thank you.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Mr. McDonald, we'd like to take this. We got you. We'd like to take this opportunity to provide you a few minutes to ask any question of the board or to make a closing statement.
Can you see me or hear me? Because I've lost all signal. My screen completely went black.
Well, I can see you and hear you.
Okay.
So go right ahead.
All right. So I do want to take a second to at least make a closing statement here. I just want to tell you why I feel like I'm the right candidate for you. I think you're looking for a few different things in your superintendent. You're looking for somebody who has experience and knowledge on the academic side, as well as the business side of running a school district, as well as someone who wants to be here and who has a connection. So I feel like we've already talked a lot about my academic and business side throughout this interview, as well as the previous interview. So I may want to spend just a moment here on the second part, which is my connection to the district. And I know, you know, I mentioned earlier and I mentioned before that I have, you know, familial relationships with the district as far as my sisters and my nephews and nieces. But I also want to focus here on my connection to the county. Wayne County is unlike any other county in the state. We tend to do things that are just flat out different than most sometimes. And in 20 years, I've never left the county. This has been where my educational career has been. So I'm familiar with a lot of those nuances that we have in Wayne County. I also have a lot of great relationships with principals, central office administrators, HR directors, and other superintendents throughout the county. I feel like those relationships are going to be even more valuable given I be in this new position, as would the relationships that I would have with my mentors. I have 3 mentor relationships, natural mentor relationships that are really already in place. The first is Dr. Livonia, who is the superintendent for Wayne Risa and the former superintendent in Livonia. He actually brought me into education 13 years ago, and I still admire him as a leader. He is a phenomenal leader, and he is one of, if not the most prominent education policy experts in the state. The next one would be Mrs. Andrea Oquist, who's my current superintendent. And quite honestly, she is the most thoughtful leader that I have ever encountered. And her friendship and mentorship will be very instrumental for me as I take on new challenges. And the third is Dr. Bill Weber. Dr. Weber is, he works for Michigan State now, but he was a superintendent for South Bedford, and he's someone I've had the opportunity to work with in my current role. And he is so knowledgeable in everything education and leadership related, and would be an excellent resource for me moving forward. And I just want to say finally too, I'm loyal. I've been with Livonia Public Schools for 20 years, and I want to be able to show Wayne Westland that same loyalty and be your next long-serving superintendent. So in closing, I just want to thank the board, for welcoming me into your homes this evening. I really appreciated that, and for giving me the opportunity to discuss my qualifications as well as my desire to be in Wayne Westland. To the staff and community, I understand there's many of you on this call. I can't see any of you right now, but I'm trusting that you are all out there. I want to say thank you for your participation and input into this process. I do wish that the circumstances could have been a little bit different and that we would have had our opportunity to meet in our face-to-face interviews. I was really looking forward to those. If I get the position, I'd still like to have maybe some opportunity to do that. It is my hope that I've successfully conveyed to you my qualifications as well as my desire to be your next long-serving superintendent. I would love to have the opportunity to work together and to lead this district to a future that we can all be proud of. And with that, I just wanted to say thanks.
Well, you're certainly welcome, Mr. McDonald, and we certainly appreciate having a Mr. caliber here and interested in our school district. We will immediately follow up with you once the board has had an opportunity to conduct the decision-making process. And we'd like to thank you again for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude item 570.20, which is the superintendent search selection process second round interviews. Next item on our agenda, 571.20, are citizens' comments on non-agenda items. This is the portion of the agenda that allows citizens to make comments on any issue they desire to address the board on that is not on tonight's agenda. Are there any people watching that would like to make a comment to the board? If the moderator could send me a text message, has she received any hands up from persons wishing to address the board? Okay, we're seeing none. We'll move on to review and recommendations of the members of the Board of Education, 570.20. Mrs. Walker.
I just want to take a time to thank everyone who came out to watch us go through the process this evening. Like I always say, this is something that's really important to us as a family, and that's important for us, all of us, to be a part of picking our next superintendent. Thank you. Have a good evening and stay safe.
Thank you, Mrs. Walker. Mrs. Hines?
Hi, yes, I'd like to also thank the community for coming in with us to observe these superintendent interviews. It's a very important process for the district, and it does let us know where our next direction is going to be heading. Sorry I had a little technical difficulties earlier, but I'm back on track. And thank you guys for all participating.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Mrs. Medell?
I also want to thank everybody who has chimed in on this Zoom session, and staff, community members, interested community, parents, everybody. And we might even have a couple mayors out there that are in on this. But I want to also thank our two candidates for considering coming to work for our students for the next couple school years. So be safe out there, people. That's all I can say is please be safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Mr. Buckaloo?
Yes, thank you, sir. Well, you said it earlier, Mr. Cox, that it's important that our stakeholders contact us with their comments and their thoughts. It is our decision to make, but we do need to take a look at some of the thoughts of our stakeholders as we make that that decision. I want to thank Mr. Dignan and also Mr. McDonald for coming in tonight. This is not the process that we had hoped to use to select our new superintendent. We had hoped to have a meet and greet and a handshake and all of those kinds of things, but that seems to be in the rearview mirror at this point. So we will do the best we can. And I know that having listened to these two candidates, regardless of which way we go, we're going to have an excellent superintendent moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Buckaloo. Mr. Neal?
Yes, I'm happy that we've had this format. I think it's been an effective alternative to the meeting we could have had. Actually, the more we get used to it, the more effective I think that it is. I did scan across the top to see how many people were here and see their names and some of their faces. It was gratifying to see so many people involved. And I'm looking forward to seeing their comments on Supe Search as listed on our page. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Neal. Dr. Weaver?
Yes, thank you, President Cox. Again, I'd like to thank everyone for being with us tonight. It shows your interest and dedication to our district. And I know that I, as a board member, appreciate it very much. I'd like to say thank you to both candidates. I felt like both of them upped their game tonight and interviewed very well. And I look forward to the process that is ahead. Thank you, Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Dr. Weaver, and thank you to all the members of the Board of Education and the administration for bringing this meeting together. As Mr. Neal said, there were many more participants in this meeting this evening with Zoom than I expect might have been able to attend inside of the board chambers. So that was gratifying to see, and everybody had an opportunity to see what the board saw in real time. Thank you, Mr. Dignan, and thank you, Mr. McDonald. You both did an exceptional job in the process of interviewing, and to have men of your caliber interested in serving as superintendent is certainly a benefit to the district, and we appreciate that. Just as we appreciate Mr. John Silveri's the procedure that he's brought us through to get us to this point. Now, the Board of Education is going to be making a decision on the superintendent selection on the 4th of May. Until that time, we are welcoming any comments that people who have seen this Zoom meeting tonight or might see it in record to contact us through the email address supesearch@wwcsd.net. That email address will be posted on our landing page for our district website, and every member of the Board of Education will have an opportunity to review your comments before they make their decision. With that, thank you all, and I will now take a motion to adjourn the meeting this evening. Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Moved by Dr. Weaver. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Mrs. Walker. Mr. Neal, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Walker,
Yes.
Dr. Weaver,
Yes.
Ms. Hines. Ms. Hines? I'm sure she agrees.
Yes.
Okay.
You're right.
Myself, yes. Mr. Buckaloo,
Yes.
Mrs. Medell,
Yes.
and President Cox.
And I also vote yes. Thank you. We are adjourned.